Hello there. You have Morgan, Research Director and Lead Retail Analyst of Rethink Retail. And I am met with two amazing interviewees today, Matt Nichols from Commerce Ventures and Anna Farberov from PepsiCo Labs. So just to tell you a little bit more about Anna is General Manager at PepsiCo Labs. Anna is at the forefront of PepsiCo's planning for the future. Given her extensive experience in finance, business strategy, innovation, and CPGs, PepsiCo says she is bringing invaluable perspective and insights. And she's also helping startups who are partnering with PepsiCo Labs. Anna partners with PepsiCo senior leaders to create value for both PepsiCo and the startups that are capable of solving critical industry challenges while supporting PepsiCo's strategic initiatives. So first off, Anna, hello. Thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for having me. Great to see you.
Of course. And last but not least, we have Matt Nichols from Commerce Ventures. Commerce Ventures partners with pioneering companies that will reasonably benefit from their network's expertise. Usually coming in as an early investor, their team keeps a lookout for companies with market-ready solutions and early customer adoption. Matt, I understand your team at Commerce Ventures is reimagining the role of venture capital firm. We'll talk a little bit more about how you're doing that. The topic of today's conversation is weighing in on tech. We'll take a look at how PepsiCo Labs and Commerce Ventures are really looking at technology from a solution solving approach when they're testing tech, investing in tech, and scaling tech. If you look at PepsiCo's value chain, the company really specializes in agriculture, manufacturing, warehousing, supply chain, retail planning and execution, marketing and consumer engagement. So very broad. I think sometimes consumers, we see PepsiCo on the shelves and we forget how broad that value chain really is. So your team at PepsiCo Labs works alongside partners to identify and solve critical needs based on some of your strategic priorities. What are some of the most critical challenges PepsiCo Labs is looking to solve?
Oh, thank you. So yes, you've kind of described it well, right? I think many people don't realize that to get the bag of potato chips on the shelf actually means you need to grow a potato. You need to kind of get this to a manufacturing site. You need to manufacture the potato. You need to drive it, etc. So PepsiCo is truly seed to shelf, what we would like to call at a global scale across multiple categories. And that means that we get to address and touch different business needs and partner with the most amazing technology out there across the board. So probably everything that is cool and fun I get to see. And I think the way we usually bucket it is one bucket would be the low hanging fruit, right? So what are some of the business needs that are relatively simple? We can find mature point solutions that can unlock value very quickly. And a few examples can be barcode scanning. If we're looking for a better way to read barcodes and implement that, already integrate that within an existing PepsiCo app, or machine health. So how can we help our machines, our lines run better and prevent unplanned downtime? And have our employees, frontline employees, give them better visibility to their tasks, etc. So those are more of a point solution, and we need them because sometimes you're able to unlock a lot of value very fast. Then the second bucket would be the transformation, right? So how can we transform the way PepsiCo in the industry operates? And they're much broader. How can we redesign our warehouses and our network? Can we come up with new ways to deliver our product? Can we, transform the industry and the supply chain end to end, create better visibility, etc. And this is where usually we need to lean in with the startups. We need to develop the solutions. We need to hold hands because those are the areas where we want to be at the forefront and become the industry leaders. And that means that you need to co-develop. That means that sometimes you need to bring together and overlay multiple solutions. I can give examples. I don't know if I'm happy to share examples on both, but I guess we're going to touch sustainability later on. But imagine if we are in a mission to decarbonize our fleet. PepsiCo owns and operates the largest private fleet in the world. And electrification is really the North Star for that goal. But in the meantime, we have so many legacy trucks and so many routes across our network are not electrification ready yet. So can we, for example, implement a solution that will help us retrofit our existing trucks to biodiesel and by that decarbonize them? So that will be an example for a point solution. But then on the other hand, on the complexity, on the other side of complexity or transformation scale, then if you think of the way PepsiCo traditionally delivered product, we would use our own fleet and our own trucks to deliver it to customers. So can we bring more flexibility and more agility? For example, if we bring in gig and other providers and we step back and we look at each and every delivery and identify what are the critical requirements for that delivery and then figure out the best way to deliver it. And that can be using our own trucks, that can be using parcel delivery or gig workers, etc. That will give us so much more flexibility in how we operate. So that will be more on the transformation side.
So I see how you're really partnering with these tech solution providers and these solution providers in general, so that they're developing to solve the actual need. So many times I think it's easy to just come up with a solution and try to fit it into a box, but you're able to partner and develop the solution to fit that need, which I think is wonderful. Love what you're doing over there, Anna. And I suppose just thinking about it from a grocery industry perspective, from your grocer partners, your retail partners, there are some substantial benefits to these partners as well from what you're doing, correct?
Of course, because if we're able to run our business in a more agile way to support changes in demand and to better satisfy our consumers and customers, then yes, everybody benefits, right? If we can react faster to an out of stock, if we can better predict the demand, if we look at the demand at a micro targeted environment per store, per time of day, per population segment, right? So if we can dynamically address each and every need, then it's a win-win for all.
Very good. Yeah, I love that perspective. And Matt, your team is really focused on identifying solutions and technologies that align with your network's core area of expertise. Can you give us a little bit of a view of what you consider to be most viable partners or most viable technology partners?
Yeah, happy to do that. So we really invest in the leading technology companies, infrastructure companies across both retail and financial services. So really powering the next generation of those industries. I lead all of our investing in retail tech, which broadly is technologies that are rethinking the physical experience for shopping, the digital experience, obviously bringing those two things together. And maybe just to sort of frame this, give you a couple examples of some of the companies we've invested in. So Narvar powers the post-purchase experience for probably half of the top 100 retailers. I would say everybody who's listening to this probably has returned a product using the Narvar platform, or Forder that does fraud management for some of the biggest e-commerce vendors to make sure that those charges that are going on your credit card are actually yours. Or Trove that is enabling big retailers like Patagonia and REI and Lululemon to offer used goods on their platform in a way that some of these other networks have. Or Kevel that powers retail media networks for some of the biggest grocery and other marketplaces, and Grabango that does frictionless checkout for grocery. So really think about it as that core infrastructure that's allowing those retailers and brands to keep up with the experiences their consumers are expecting.
We look at the way that you're partnering. Both of you have really talked about how you're looking at tech investments or pilots as a partnership. Again, love that perspective. But Anna, why don't you start here and tell us more about the level of support that PepsiCo Labs really offers to these front-running tech providers?
Yeah, so when you think of it, what startups really need, right? They need expertise, they need scale, and they need money. On the latter, with financing, Matt and the VC industry are much better than us at this. But on the first two, on business expertise and on scale, those are the two kind of unique capabilities that large companies like PepsiCo bring to the table. And if you break it down, the first, it all starts with a pilot because we want to see if the solution even works in a real world environment. So we try to kind of isolate a use case, and we provide all the support. We dedicate and commit a lot of resources and managerial and leadership attention and engagement. And we are handholding the startups and the business together. So we are the glue between the two to see if it works. And just by seeing how it actually kind of exists or how it is being tested in a real world PepsiCo environment, that's already a lot of value to the startups. Now, if this is successful and we take this from a pilot to scale, so again, we are a global company. We help them. If we become a customer, we tend to be one of the largest, if not the largest customer. So we are a source of revenue. And we also help them scale this and take it across multiple geographies. We work with them on creating more use cases. We work with them on expanding their offering and we really focused on creating that win-win because we want them to become successful and scalable and stable, because we know that the more stable they are, the better they can service us, right? So it's a bit even a selfish ask, that we support them in growing. And it's a very different mindset than negotiating with other tech companies, right? When you think of the SAPs and the Microsoft of the world, who are also our great partners, but they are already very big companies. Those startups really need PepsiCo support to become those next tech giants, and we're very happy to partner on that.
Same for you, Matt. So tell us more from an investment perspective. How are you really viewing these tech providers and solution providers as partners? What are you doing there?
Yeah, I think at the highest level, a lot of VCs invest in certain sectors. But I think one of our investors described us, I think, in a really interesting way, which is that you said, you all actually participate in your sector. And there's actually something different about being a participant in the sector versus investing in the sector. And even though we are investors, I think we view ourselves as participants in those sectors. And I think that, to your question, accrues a huge amount of benefit to those startups. But it really starts with being integrated with the retailers and brands who live in these sectors. And we've over the 10-year sort of history of our firm, have built long-standing relationships with some of the world's biggest brands and retailers. Anna, for example, would be a great example of that. And I think because we view ourselves as participants in this sector, we view those relationships as incredibly powerful and strong. And our goal is to provide unique insights, interactions with those retailers and brands, to give them our view on what could actually be relevant to them, almost regardless of whether those companies are in our portfolio or not. And I think by doing that and providing an unbiased view to our retailer and brand friends, we are able in turn to be able to deliver a lot of value to the companies we invest in. Because
Absolutely.
they know that we have a valuable relationship with the people who they ultimately want to sell to, and that we have a way to very genuinely connect them with the most likely customers in a high value, high trust environment, which I think you can only do as being a participant in the sector. So that's really how we do it. And I think the proof is in them wanting to have us invest dramatically more in future rounds. And luckily, I think 20 plus of our CEOs have actually invested in our fund. So not only have they taken money from us, but also have believed in the model enough to invest in the fund.
Very interesting. Yeah, that speaks volumes. And when we talk about, I know we're talking a little bit about piloting and testing and making the right connections. Let's talk a little bit about viability and real world testing. So Anna, some of PepsiCo's strategic initiatives, maybe we talk a little bit about sustainability. I know the company announced that it's working to achieve net zero by 2040. The company has also said that it plans to decarbonize its entire value chain, as you had mentioned previously. And earlier this year, I know PepsiCo opened an industry-leading greenhouse at the R&D headquarters. The center is being used to field test, analyze, measure some of the compostable packaging in order to speed up the rate of innovation on that front. And it's difficult to imagine that there could be a standard approach to testing. Can you speak a little bit more about some of the tests and pilots that your team have launched?
It all starts with a business need, right? Sustainability can be the main KPI we're trying to optimize. It can be a secondary KPI. So if we're trying to optimize for speed or agility or manufacturing capacity, etc., one of the KPIs can be waste reduction or decarbonization, etc. But regardless of the KPIs, it starts with what is the problem we're trying to solve? What are we optimizing for? And then going into that, finding the right partner to pilot and going into pilot with that mindset, I think is already setting you up for success. Because when we go into the pilot, we know how the success of the pilot looks like. What is in scope, what's out of scope. Because we're not trying to boil the ocean. It's really hard to test everything. We're not trying to do science projects for a whole year to see everything that can happen. If we want to solve for waste reduction in a manufacturing line, or we want to see decarbonization, so biodiesel, transition from regular diesel to biodiesel of our trucks without compromising operations and without reducing the truck's viability, then that is the KPI, right? So can we do the same with biodiesel without the truck actually breaking down? And that is how we always start. And then the next level or the next phase will be, how do we create that? How do we set up the pilot for success? So how do we bring in the right business experts as well as supporting functions to make sure that we can run very, very fast? And if we take the biodiesel example, it's a company named Optimus, by the way. They're amazing. And what they've developed is a hardware. So it's a component that goes into our trucks and allows it to run on biodiesel. So on both, actually, but most times, over 90% of time, it runs on biodiesel, which is has a better environmental footprint. To do that, we had to bring in our engineering experts. We had to bring in our go-to-market and field experts. We had to bring in multiple, anything from procurement to make sure that we set it up the right way, from contracting to legal. If it's a software solution, you need IT and enterprise architecture and multiple teams. And when you think of the amount of functions and teams that the startup needs to engage with just to get a pilot off the ground, it's overwhelming. So this is where we support them, right? We bring all the right players. We try to simplify and be the one point of contact, and we take care of the corporate structure. So we go in with the right stakeholders, with the right decision makers, so the people that can actually take a decision at the end of the pilot on how we scale this. We go in with the right matrix because we know what is in the pilot. We know what we want to see and what will differentiate from success or no, right? So we're saying we want to reduce X or we want to see Y. And when you do that, and do that across for sustainability pilots, other pilots, when you set this up, that already, I think, creates a high level of trust and visibility. So everybody's very clear on, was this successful, yes or no? Because I think the worst thing, well, two bad things can happen. One is if at the end of the pilot, the startups think that they've delivered and did a great job, while the PepsiCo people do not see it. That means we did not go in with the right expectations. And then the second is if everybody agrees this was a great pilot, but nobody knows what's next. So how do we actually scale this? Who takes a decision on taking this to the next level? And this is where our governance model with our senior leadership comes into play, because they're involved from the beginning to push us and to take fast decisions.
I'll tag on that a little bit. So we really appreciate it when brands and retailers like Pepsi have a really defined process for that. I think there's three answers that a startup could get from a brand or retailer: yes, no, or maybe. And it's actually in that order. So the maybe is the worst thing that can happen. So, or unknown, because then the brand exudes a huge amount of effort thinking that brand XYZ is going to actually do something. If they're not, that's a terrible thing. So I think it's great when there's a really good process that the startups understand, even if it doesn't end up with them, becoming, or the brand becoming a customer. If you can get there quickly, it matters a lot. So.
Exactly. And that is a critical point, because I think being able to kill things fast, we're kind of have the VC mindset. We're not expecting 100% to succeed, which is very different from a corporate mindset that, you can drag things forever sometimes, and project can run forever and nobody takes a decision to kill it, while we keep pushing to shutting down as fast as you can if this is not the right solution and if this doesn't work, because we are aware of the amount of resources the startup needs to put in, right? While PepsiCo is a very big company, we have 300,000 employees. If 10 pilots fail, if 100 pilots fail, we won't feel it probably, while the startup, they're many times dedicate almost all of their resources on this one single pilot. So for them, it's literally a question of life or death. And we want to be as transparent as possible and provide the right feedback as fast as possible. And if this doesn't work, and actually, Matt, to your point, they really appreciate it if we come and we say, you know what, not the right solution. And usually they see it, right? Because they don't want to live in this illusion as well, and a year after find out that this didn't work.
Absolutely. And the speed that the market, the speed of the change with consumer behaviors. So just the change over time, just that almost real-time feedback, or as real-time as you can get feedback. I can only imagine how valuable that is to solution provider partners. When we're considering the technology of self-order, self-checkout, and delivery service, Matt, I know that your team is partnering with technology companies like Grabango, as you mentioned before. That's, for those who may not know Grabango, it's a free service offered by grocery and convenience stores, allowing shoppers to skip the checkout line and simply walk out after scanning. How are you measuring and tracking consumers' perception of these offerings?
Yeah. First, maybe get a little preamble on it. I think this is our belief is this is probably one of the most transformative technologies out there. Like, lots of money has been invested in making the e-commerce experiences work really well. But if you think about your physical experience of walking to a grocery store, probably hasn't changed that much in 20 years. So, I think the ability to simply walk out and really differentiate it from the experience of going to a self-checkout line, which really has helped the retailer because it's taking labor away from the retailer, but really has pushed that onto the consumer. And our view is, hey, is there an ability to not only remove that retail that work that has to be done by the retailer, but also not force on the consumer, so literally being able to walk out. So I think that's what we think is so valuable about this type of solution. From measurement of sort of the efficacy of it and how well consumers are liking it, I think it's two things. What percentage of shoppers walking through the store ultimately use the service, so that's critically important. We think in the long term, there's an opportunity to take this technology and apply it to everybody who walks through the store, regardless of whether they're aware of it or not. The only difference is as you check out, all you do is pay instead of scanning the items. But in the shorter term, is what percentage of people use the service, and then second is what sort of repeat activity you see. So once people utilize it, are you finding that they continue to utilize that service or go back to using it in the way that they used to do it? So I think we are definitely seeing a really impressive percentage of people using the service, but probably what's even more impressive is once someone tries this, they never go back. And I think that will be a sort of watershed moment in this category where enough consumers have tried it and said, wow, I cannot believe that I waited in line that long and checked out all these items by hand. I think will seem crazy in retrospect. So I guess that's how I'd probably say it. It's just, percentage of people using the service and then how often they continue to use it over and over once they've tried it.
Good. And you spoke a little bit, Matt, about improving operational efficiency. So labor, for instance, you're improving on in that way. Micro fulfillment, out of stock, detection, supply chain visibility. You guys are kind of across the board, so we can look a little broader than just checkout. But some of those technologies beyond just the checkout, how are they improving both the customer experience and that operational efficiency?
Yeah, so I think the in-store frictionless checkout is really driving an in-store experience for people who are doing the shopping in store. But I think you can't deny that a higher and higher percentage of consumers will continue to order their groceries online. And if you look at the vast majority of grocers, maybe almost everybody other than maybe Tesco has not figured out how to deliver groceries profitably. That's a big issue, right? So I think when we think about what are the operational efficiencies that you need to drive to make an online order for grocery work, one is picking, right? Because historically the consumers did the picking for you. So we are very strong advocates of utilizing micro fulfillment, multi-level goods to person systems. Our view on that category is that most of these existing solutions in the market are far too expensive. There's only so many grocers who are going to spend $10 million on a single location. So sort of low cost versions of that, we're very bullish on. The second is figuring out delivery and how do you do delivery more effectively and utilizing the vast networks of last mile providers out there. And then sort of in the middle is dramatically improving the accuracy and reducing the cost of really understanding what's on your shelves. So historically, it wasn't so bad if I walked into a grocery store that didn't have my peanut butter. But if I ordered my peanut butter and then it didn't get delivered to my house, I'm really upset. So, seeing lots of innovation in technology that is allowing both grocers and the brands themselves get more real-time visibility onto true out of stock, so that if you ordered on Instacart or your order on Kroger.com, instead of having 80% of your order be right, can it be 98%? And I think if you had perfect accuracy and didn't have to spend a huge amount of time having store associates go through with a clipboard and decide and tell you what's out of stock, there's some big advantages, both on a operational cost savings to doing that, and two, from the customer experience to getting the things you ordered. So I would say that those are probably the big categories where we think both improving that order experience and giving the promise of profitability are going to be incredibly important to both customers and retailers and brands.
Going back to the point about viability, we hear of so many great technologies, right? We love robotics. Automation seems so cool. And then now we're talking so much about generative AI. What seems viable? Are you guys tossing around ideas to make this work? I know we're going for a solution solving approach. Are you finding, core use cases for generative AI for robotics or automation?
Yeah, definitely. I'll start with the more obvious ones and then go to probably a less, almost more interesting, less obvious one. So clearly in realms of customer service, we're hearing retailers say, hey, before my chat bots or old technology could service maybe 20% of consumers' questions, and I think any one of us who've used a chatbot would probably say that's generous, to 80% plus, because the technology has actually delivered on their promise of being able to answer most of a consumer's questions without interacting with an agent. So I think that's interesting. I think both sort of creative and advertising are going to be transformed by it. What images, messages are you creating for your consumers? Where are you reaching out to consumers, and how are you delivering marketing spend? That will most likely be more and more automated using AI. But I think that the one category that I think people aren't talking about as much, what I think is incredibly interesting, is the utilization of AI for negotiation, largely between retailers and brands. So it's a thing that Amazon has been doing for 5 years. Going to their supplier base, negotiating on price and terms automatically using AI, and really no one else had the technology. I think today, as that technology has matured, that you're going to see lots more sort of business to business interactions in the retail world, where you'll be, particularly if you have a long tail of suppliers, being able to negotiate them in ways that you really just couldn't do as a sort of individual merchant. So I think that's probably the less talked about, but perhaps more interesting utilization of AI and large language models for retail.
And if I can add, I think it's super interesting because I think, Matt, you're really looking at use cases that are very much, I guess, future looking, right? Because as a big industry player, we tend to be a bit behind on the VC community, and rightfully so, because our requirements are probably harder. So I think for us, the approach for generative AI, but also automation and robotics in general, are how do we simplify the hardest things? How do we automate the easy things versus trying to solve the hardest things? And it's not, automation for the sake of automation. It's more, what is the incrementality versus my existing solutions that can be beneficial? So I think while some use cases that you've outlined, Matt, are kind of perfect, others where we think that humanoids can solve for everything in the warehouse store are still a few years behind.
So Commerce Ventures, I know you have some big names in your network, including Eduardo Castro Wright, who's a former vice chairman at Walmart. Your team's network is really made up of many influential retail leaders, Matt. So how is your team continuing to partner with retailers, specifically grocers, to solve industry challenges, and actually opening the floor to both of you? How are you partnering with your grocery partners?
Yeah, I would say for us, it's trying to remain relevant and continue to show them interesting ideas, and frankly, being totally honest about the viability of those ideas from our perspective. So I remember a very large, top 10 global grocer told me about a problem he's trying to solve. And I said, hey, there's only one company that's doing this, but I don't think it's ready for prime time. So being very willing to say, hey, look, here's what's out there. I think based on what we're seeing from what other retailers are doing, this is viable or not viable, has been super valuable to our grocery retailers to know where they should really spend their time. And it's sort of building that network so that they don't have to go test every single thing. They get the benefit of us knowing broadly what is working and what is not, so they're not starting from ground zero as they test every shiny object that is out there that our amazing entrepreneurs think up. So I think it's trying to be relevant there and bringing all those people into our network, either as partners, many top retailers are investors in our fund, individuals who used to be retail execs are investors in our fund, which also just sort of continues to solidify those relationships.
I'm happy to provide kind of the perspective from our end. So when you think of the PepsiCo value chain and our partners, which can be retailers, food service customers, or restaurant customers, right? So they complement our supply chain. If we want to get value truly end to end, we need to partner with one of our customers, and where we try and getting two big companies, right? It's complicated when it's one startup and one big company. Try doing that with two big companies. That elevates the level of complexity. So we try to, number one, find the true incremental value in partnering, because if we're going after the same problem that only exists in our own supply chain, maybe it's easier to do it separately. But the magic happens when you find a solution that we can only do together. And this is where we kind of identify those use cases that will benefit both, and we go after with a third party. And we're now in kind of early stages of exploring that with both a restaurant partner and a retail partner. I think we can bring to the table, PepsiCo Labs has been running for 5 years now. I think we are very good at creating the internal kind of traction and results, and we have over 30 solutions now scaling at a global scale across PepsiCo. So I think we are also very happy to share from our experience or from the framework and playbooks that we've developed of how big companies can really integrate innovation. And that's, this is one of the I guess future challenges I'm most excited about, and that will be something we'll definitely focus on for the second half of the year and then next year.
You said it perfectly. You're partnering with the solution providers. You're being strategic. You're looking at what's actually viable, and you're solving for challenges. Again, not only partnering with the solution providers, but with grocers and retail partners, and as you mentioned, Anna, your restaurant partners too. So I think the approach is one that is spot on, and you guys are proving it day in and day out.
There's still so many opportunities on the table and below the table, and kind of still not at the table because we don't see them. But this industry is evolving very fast, and reality and our consumer needs are evolving very fast. So I think we still have work and job security, I assume, for the next 10 years at least, Matt.
I think you guys are very safe. And I hope that in the coming years, you guys will join us on many more conversations like this. I think there's plenty to talk about, and really a pleasure to have you both on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.